Hey everyone, and welcome to another Sasquatch Theory podcast. On this episode, we have Patsy from North Carolina, and she had a very close and personal Bigfoot encounter when she was about 9 or 10 years old with her sister in the garden. As Patsy was observing this unknown creature by the garden, she noticed it was swaying back and forth. We often hear that these Bigfoot creatures will sway back and forth. Are they possibly trying to get a better look at the human beings, or is it a nervous behavior? Researchers in the past have made claims that the Sasquatch display autistic behaviors. Patsy recalls in her early childhood days of her father warning her not to venture out into the forest. Perhaps her father has ran into these creatures in the past and was well aware of their existence. Have you had a Bigfoot encounter before? If so, please log down your encounter on Sasquatch Theory, and I would certainly like to hear all about it. Thank you everyone for the support. If you guys can, please like this podcast, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to comment down below. Alright, with all that being said, let's dive into our next Bigfoot encounter from the state of South Carolina. All right, Patsy, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, McGill. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm glad we finally get to talk. If you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Originally, I was raised in South Carolina, and of course, I'm a resident of North Carolina now, but I've been fascinated with the Bigfoot encounters ever since I had a encounter when I was in grade school. I was probably at least 8 or 9 years old, and my family was working in the garden. The garden was down a hill away from the home, and my sisters and parents were completing their farming duties, so to speak, and they were about to complete it, and they told me, they said, why don't you go ahead and go on to the house, and which was a little distant from where the garden was located, and take some of the farming tools and put them, we had a safekeeping place we call a well house, which was just a shed that surrounded and covered a well. It wasn't enclosed by no means. And so I did. I took the farming tools and headed to the home. And as I entered the well shed, I noticed the sun was going down because it was getting, dusk, so to speak. And I remember seeing, the setting through the trees. You could see the lights going straight down. As I placed the tools at the well house, I noticed a figure that was standing behind a bush. And the bush was not quite full because you could see the sun in between, the limbs, and also the bush. I could see a shape of a silhouette of something standing there, of a figure behind this bush. The bush was probably only, I'd say, probably about 5 to 6 feet tall. It wasn't very big, and it was kind of wide. And my first thought was, well, there's a person standing behind this bush. And then as I watched it closer, I saw the outline of it and its shape. And there was no indentions between the head or the shoulder. It was full and it was wide and it was dark. And I could tell that it was full, like hair, on the outside of this creature or whatever I was looking at the time. And it wasn't very big. It wasn't no 6 or 8 foot tall Bigfoot, but it was a small one, maybe 4 or 4.5 foot. And it stood there as the sun, like I said, was going down between the branches. It gave me enough light to recognize that much of it. It wasn't no dog because it was on 2 legs, because it waddled back from left to right foot, like on your hips, just going left to right, just waddling constantly. And that's what was really strange, the movement of it. It did never come out of the bush line. It stayed in that bush line as I stared at it and as it stared at me. Of course, I just froze in my tracks because I, never seen anything like this before. And it was only probably 20 or 25 feet. I was very close to it because the whale house was right beside the bush, basically just a few feet from it. And I had just completed putting the tools away and stepped back when I saw it. And it watched me, like I said, as I watched, and I was frozen. I couldn't move. I didn't know what to do. I stood there, had to get enough courage to tell myself that I need to get back to my family. So all of a sudden, I got enough courage to run as I ran back to the garden where my family was completing their task. And as I told them the story, they didn't believe me. They thought I was just imagining something as a child. So that was as far as it went. And then as I started back to the house with my family, I wasn't going back by myself. They also we went to the location and there was nothing there at the time. It had already left.
Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible encounter. And I can just picture this in my mind of this Sasquatch creature hiding behind a bush and swaying back and forth. Why do you think it was swaying back and forth?
I don't know. I I was trying to hear other people's experience, and somebody else had another experience with it waddling left to right as they saw it. I don't know why it was waddling or what that has to do with their um, communication, or if it was just their behavior. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That is a question.
It could have been trying to
So,
get a better look at you, or it was like a nervous habit. A lot of people say that autistic people will sway back and forth, and people have
mhm.
made a correlation between Sasquatch and autistic people.
Very, very, very good observation because I hadn't thought of that, but that makes sense because I do remember autism people doing that same left or right, and that's exactly what it was doing. But it stayed within that bush line where I couldn't see it or her, whoever, whichever species it was, um, or gender, left or right. So that was pretty much my first encounter. And are you ready for me to move on to the next one?
A few more
Have any
questions.
questions?
About
Sure.
how tall do you think this being was?
Well, maybe anywhere between 4 or 4.5 feet. It wasn't taller to come out above the bush. The bush was pretty short, as I can recall. And of course, I was, pretty short myself. So, Bush was taller than I was, and I was, like wasn't very tall myself. But I, I would say 4 to 4.5 feet
Yeah, that sounds
because
like
the
a
bush was.
juvenile.
That's what I think.
Yeah, and what
That's what I
color
think
was
too.
it? Was it black or
I think
like
it
a
was
red or
dark.
brown?
Yeah, I think it was a dark, either brown. That I couldn't define as much, but it was dark. I do remember dark and full. Um, but like I said, it didn't have no indentions for shoulders, and I knew it wasn't a person. And in my mind, I was going through the process. Is this an animal? No, the animal can't stand up on 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I don't know whether it wanted to come and play because I was young, and I did play a lot outside in the fields in on our property. Just we had acres of land, and we backed up to a lake as well, and so they had plenty of water ways to survive in the area that we lived in.
Yeah,
So
it was probably watching you guys and wanting something out of the garden. Um, what area of this was in South Carolina, correct?
correct.
Was
It
it
was in
upstate or central?
it was in Abbeville County. I'll give you that much. And so it is. That's about 1 hour from Anderson, South Carolina.
Okay, I appreciate you for sharing that with me. And what
Yes.
else unfolded throughout your life?
Okay. My older sister at the time, she was walking one of our pet dogs, um, a little Boston Terrier, and she was in the 10th grade, so she was, getting up in age there, old enough to know what's going on. It was a full moon that night, because she said as she walked past the house, we had a barn area where we kept the grass cut, real nice, and that led into another area where we had a beehive, and my father had some farming equipment further up. And she said the light was really full and bright, so she didn't really need her flashlight like she normally would use to walk the dog in that area. And she looked up and she saw a hairy creature standing to the right. And she said this creature wasn't very tall either. She said the hair was kind of a grayish color, or whitish gray. She said, and it was very short, she said. And it reminded her of a troll, as we would think of today, because it was from the hair from the head all the way down to the feet. Um, and she said that its hair, because it was full and the moon was shining, she could, tell the shape of it being short. And she left very quickly with the dog and returned to the home. She didn't want to share that with us because she knew it would scare us, because we were younger at that time. And I think we were there by ourselves at that night particular. And so we didn't talk about all this until we became adults. And we were visiting one weekend, many years later, and then this story came up, and I shared my story, and then we started talking about it. So it's very interesting that she had that encounter herself. She also told me that her boyfriend, she and her boyfriend were sitting in the car one night, uh, talking, and it was very near the whale house. And they looked up and they saw something move behind the building. And they both kind of got freaked out on that. So they came on in the house. They didn't stay out in the car very long. So it's like little bits and pieces were being kind of revealed to us about this. I did call the state uh, park ranger, or whatever you call it, down in that area to ask if they ever had any reports of Bigfoot. And they said no, they had not ever heard of anything. So I thought, okay. So that's my second little story, and I have a couple of more to share. Um, I'm going to share this one here first, because this was the most recent, in the year probably 2000 or so. The home place was going to be tore down, and I wanted to go visit it before this occurred. So I had a friend go with me, and I was, just sharing the property and where everything was, and when I lived there, and how it looked. And because we had kind of a large farm, and as we entered the property, it was winter time, because that's the only way I would go down there, because I didn't want to get on snakes, and it was growed up so much, or ticks for that matter. The leaves had fallen off the trees. Um, and so as we walked past the home place towards this barn area, which is the same area where my sister saw the other Bigfoot, juvenile or whatever, as we walked past the home towards that barn area, we stopped and just to discuss, the layout of the property. And I was telling my friend about how we would play in this barn, and that sort of thing. And all of a sudden, we started hearing something walk in the leaves, and toward the right of us where we were standing, and it got kind of louder, and it started getting closer and closer. And at first she said, that sounds like a deer. I said, no, wait a minute, it doesn't. It sounds like 2 feet walking. I said, listen at it again. So we stood there listening to this, and we both decided it was not a deer. And it came closer and closer, and we never saw anything, visually where you could tell what it was. And then all of a sudden, as it got so close, it was like it would be right there on you. We saw, or not saw, we heard another uh, sound coming from straight in front, and it was the same uh, sound as the Bigfoot would be making walking in the leaves. We heard this too, and it was in front of us, and it sounded like it was coming right towards us. We used to sit there and just kind of all figuring out what's going on, and then all of a sudden it came to the left of us. It was coming in every direction. Same thing, walking in the leaves, coming towards us in that direction. Then it came from behind us. It was all around us. Okay? Wherever they were coming to visually, I guess, to welcome me home, maybe, or um, to see uh, what I end up looking like as a adult, as after I'd seen them as a child, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, then we said, well, I think it's time to leave at this point because we're invading somebody's uh, property here with them being close by. But they were so close, you were looking for them every second to step out, and you never saw it. So anyway, we ended up leaving that location. So that was another confirmation of what I knew and felt about Bigfoot. Okay. And then uh, my last experience, well, may have one more after this. Do you have any questions so far?
Oh, no, I'm just sitting here listening, and I've experienced the same thing here in Missouri, the bipedal walking in the leaves, and you just can't see what it is. I've also had an experience like that in South Carolina at an area
Oh,
called
really?
Poinsett Bridge. And yeah, it sounded like something was coming down the mountain, and it just stopped right at the edge of the wood line in the middle of the day.
Right. That's right. That's right. Same kind of thing, you know. So anyway, okay. Um, this next experience, I was in grade school. Um, and we lived in the old home place. I was going to get the clothes off of a clothesline, which was a little distant from the house. So it was kind of in the same area, but it was past the shed where we had the water well, so to speak. And as I walked up there, and it was dusk again. The sun was going down. I remember because it's always in that same line of direction where I was going. Um, all of a sudden, I looked up and I saw we had a couple of fruit trees, and it was going towards a path that my dad would drive his tractor when he parked it at the tractor shed, which was further behind our home. And there was well, we called them Martians back then, but UFO creatures now they call them. There was at least three of them standing. They had metallic silver suits on. I remember that. And there was a little spacecraft, a little round, circular, and it was right there close. They were in front of it. I couldn't really see that much of it. Uh, but they were looking towards the ground, okay, like looking straight down at the ground. One of them had something in their hand, almost like a tool, like a handle of something like, I don't know if they was digging the dirt, the soil, trying to get a soil sample, or what they were doing with the soil right there. But they were right there, all looking down, okay, at that. Um, and then all of a sudden they spotted me watching them, I guess. And they looked up, and all of them started walking towards me, but they were in a straight line, almost like an army would walk shoulder to shoulder. And they walked towards me, and of course, I was frightened, and I ran like crazy, and left the clothes basket and all. And then my mother had to go up there and get them in after dark because it was about dark, almost dark by then. Time we talked about it, I guess. But that happened also, and um, that was kind of the completion of that particular story.
Did that take place where you saw the juvenile Sasquatch and where your sister seen one?
Yes, it did.
Wow. So you feel like there's
I think
possibly a connection between the Sasquatch and the alien beings?
I do. I think so. I
Yeah.
really do. And another thing was it was like we called it a gully, but it was a big opening in the ground, and it went further down. And my dad always told us never to go beyond this point right here. Don't know why, but he always told us that. And it makes me wonder if he knew something down there, or if he saw something. He never told us if he did. Of course, he's deceased now, so we can't really find that out. Um, but he always told us don't go beyond. So we almost had a fear not to go beyond a certain area of the property. And it makes you wonder now, why or what that, if it was a vortex or something in the back part of the property or something, they had a cave or something. I don't know. It's just kind of strange.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, absolutely. Maybe he experienced something unusual back there, whether it was vocalizations or he's seen a Sasquatch or saw something else.
Absolutely. Yes. And I know that he did one time have there was a fallen star, astro, what you call it, that fell, and it usually they burn up before they hit the earth, but he found one. He saw it when he was, I think, in the garden plowing, and then he forgot about it. And then he went back again, and then he said it was about as big as a tub. It was huge. I mean, a tin tub, and it was splattered on the ground. So he picked up pieces of it. He remembered seeing it, and that was pretty phenomenal, back then. Of course, they also had there was a lot of Indian uh, artifacts that were found too. Um, so
yeah, that is interesting.
not only Indian heads, but like we found like an Indian pipe and Indian, like one of their tools, like a not a
like a
not a
tomahawk, things
hoe.
like that.
Yeah,
Spears.
something of that
Mm-hmm.
sort. Yes, something of that sort. But anyway, so that was kind of that situation. But when I got older, and I remember, I was living, uh, by myself at the time, and I remember I had a dog. It was a cocker spaniel, and he was a very loving dog and very protective, and he was an inside dog. I remember one night when I went to sleep, the dog, I had just turned the lights out, and the dog started growling like something was in the house. Okay. Um, and so the dog started backing up on me, like something was coming in the room, and he was backing up to protect me. And I just kind of laid there and prayed, Lord, protect me, help me here. I don't know what I'm encountering, but I pray that you'll protect me, and that it'll be, if it's something evil, will be leaving, whatever. I didn't know what it was. And then finally, the dog settled down. Nothing else. I never heard or saw anything, at all. I was afraid to get up and move at that point. Um, so that happened one night, and then another night was pretty interesting. Um, I had this experience, and I don't know if I was being made connection with the UFO people at this point, but this long, it was a long instrument, and it was dark black. I woke up, I remember I was on my left side. When I woke up, I saw it leave. The instrument was being pulled away. And that's all I remember of that. But it was huge, you know. And I know that my mother stayed there one night, and she she was out of town, and I was asleep, and she was in the other side of the house. She came uh, while walking in my room, and she said, "What are you doing? Why are you up?" And I said, "I'm not up." I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Well, there's a light that I see going down the hall." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, I haven't been up." I said, "You sure it's not a car light coming down the road or something? She says, no. So, and that was towards the laundry room, but this was another location where I was living. It wasn't the same location as I saw the other creatures at, or the UFO Martians. So anyway, that was a kind of an interesting story too. So I just thought I'd share that with you too.
Yeah, absolutely. I do believe the Sasquatch are like physical creatures on this planet, but I also believe there's portals and other dimensions and just things that we don't understand. And,
Yes.
you know, you often hear people say you can't solve one unknown mystery with another unknown mystery, pretty much saying that you can't solve the Bigfoot mystery with aliens and UFOs. But in your case, like, you ended up seeing these gray aliens in the same area that you had a Bigfoot encounter in. And I don't feel like
Yeah.
that's just a coincidence. Maybe there's something to it, maybe there's not, but it's
Hmm.
definitely questioning, or I question it. I mean, I don't know what else to really to say about that.
Right. Well, that's what I feel like, it was all somehow connected. That they're put here for some purpose too, just like we are.
Hmm.
And I think we just have to protect and respect their purpose, and not try to kill them just so they can say, well, I found something, or I found this. And I know the more that we upset them in their territories, they can be more aggressive. What I've understood about it and read about it, with throwing things, and or knocking on trees, and kind of letting the others know that there's maybe someone coming on the property. But I never heard anything knock that I can recall. Um, you know, and I lived on that place. Grew up to my 10th grade year myself when we moved. But I just, I feel like that they have a purpose here. And God, they're part of God's creation too, just like we are. And we have to respect that, and, you know, not harm them. And I know we want to find out as much about them as possible, but it's still something that is very meaningful, and it's mysterious because we don't know enough about it, or can't seem to always get a clear shot. And like I said, I think they're invisible too. That they
Hmm.
go in different dimensions to protect us and themselves as well, I think. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I feel like people will shoot at what they don't understand. So it's going to happen. I mean, I hope that they don't, but that's just
right,
unfortunately like what's going to
it
happen in the
is.
future. And that's what science wants. They want a body. They want one of these things dead. And it's like, you're not going to learn anything about them other than, yeah,
Hmm.
they exist with a dead body. Like, I feel like we can get more data by studying these things, doing research, listening to other people's encounters. But yeah, a dead one's not going to do us any good.
Exactly. I agree with you. And I've heard of people trying to shoot them, and not been able to, just getting maybe DNA or hair samples so that they can share that. And
Hmm. Yeah, the state of
it
Oklahoma has a $3 million bounty for anyone who turns in a dead Sasquatch. So there's people out there trying to do it for sure.
wow. Well, in my opinion, have you heard a lot of this going on more in South Carolina recently, or has that just been in obviously people are coming forth more with stories?
Yeah, there's been reports there going on for a long time. There was someone that reached out by email not too long ago, and she said that she wrote a bunch of books, and they're about South Carolina, like Highway 11, Pickens County, and all kinds of areas that have had a lot of Sasquatch activity in the past. I think it's called like Walhalla, or I can't remember all the names, but
Yes, yes, yeah. Matter of fact, I have a sister that lives in Clemson, not far from that area, so I know. I've been into Walhalla area. That's
mhm,
close to the mountains, so I'm familiar with that area too.
yeah.
Um,
A lot of
yeah,
activity happening in the mountains and also outside of the mountains, like in Colombia, areas like that. So, I mean, it's strange that there's a lot of reports around like populated areas, but also the reports are coming from areas like Table Rock, where it's just like vast forest.
hmm and I guess now with all the trees in the mountains being demolished from the storm, um, Helena, a lot of them, they may be running out of their territories and going to other places now too.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that. People ask me in the comments, do I think if the hurricane like pushed the Sasquatch elsewhere? And I would think so. I mean, I feel like there's possibly Sasquatch buried underneath all that debris, and that's just a horrible thing to hear. I mean, that still
It
haunts me
is.
to this day. It's just like, how does that
Oh yeah.
happen? But I mean,
Yes.
hopefully they'll recover. I don't know if they ever will.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
That's true.
what do you think these creatures are?
Well, I think they're, like I said, I think they're part of God's creation in some ways. And I think they got a purpose, and we may not know fully what their purpose is or what they're here to do until we get to heaven and find out the answers ourselves. But I feel like that, they could be put here to protect us in some way, to look after our best interests in the future, um, in case there was a nuclear disaster, even the UFO creatures, um, just kind of a theory that I have.
Absolutely. They could be warning us of something that's coming in the future. And you never know if they're interdimensional. They could be from the future. It's hard to say.
That's true. Absolutely. So we just have to, I guess, go on faith that, when we see something like that, and pray for God's protection and guidance. But I have read some stuff that some several people have had connections where Bigfoot picked up a man one time, and I think he had fallen or gotten hurt, and Bigfoot picked him up and took him to the inside of a cave or something, and the man woke up frightened, and when he could, but it's like they were trying to communicate, but they couldn't understand the lingo of what they were saying, the sounds they were making. But a lot of people say that they can read your mind mentally, like telepathy, that you can communicate with them in that way, tell them what you think. This other lady, I remember reading a story about her in which she lived at a place she would go, I guess, to the mountains every uh, summer or whatever when she went, and this creature would show up, and I think she would leave food on the porch, and it would come up, Bigfoot, and get the food, and she would mentally, said she had a conversation with it, and she was asking it questions and trying to find out more about what and why they were here, and they were here to help us, was all that she could get from it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've heard similar
Yeah.
reports here in Missouri where people feed them and they come out and get the food and just
Mhm.
go back in the forest. And I've also spoke with people who claim to have experienced telepathy, or as the community calls it, mind speak. And it's interesting because I feel like that's how God would communicate, or angels, or the other side is like through telepathy. And
Yes.
it's interesting that these things do it as well. And yeah, you were talking about Albert Osman. He was a prospector who was reported to be abducted by a clan of Sasquatch. That was an interesting story, especially how he fed them chewing tobacco and they got really sick. And that's when he made his move and took off. But they took him to a cave,
Right.
which is
Yeah, that
interesting.
was it. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And so and I'm sure there's more stories out there. People are just afraid to share it, or wondering where the stories are going to go. you know,
Hmm.
if people are going to research that area or whatever. And
Absolutely. Have you had any strange experiences in the house after the alien encounter? Like, I don't know, like sleep paralysis, or them showing up around your room? Any like near death experiences? Any shadow people? Anything strange like that?
well, I have written a book about called Reporting Live from Heaven, and it entails um, some of my supernatural stories, that messages I have gotten back from my family after they passed, and my communication with them. And also, I worked with hospice patients and family members. And in that, I was around, and I've had a lot of encounter with people, so to speak, like well, not really. I guess it would be near death in some of them's cases. Experience things they saw before they passed, or in things that people that were coming for them, or what they envisioned. Like I had one guy, I asked him, was anybody there with us as we met that day, the patient? And he said, yes. He said, they're angels. I said, how many? He said, they're all around us right now. And he did his finger in a circle. Like there was a lot of them. And so I've had a lot of, I guess, supernatural kind of stories, and another story, which is some stories in my book. But I ended up, uh, I had some Christmas lights, and I put it on a tree that was away from the house, and to turn it on for Christmas. And the tree was so tall, I had to get a ladder, and I got tired of picking up the ladder and going around the tree and making the rounds. So I just tossed them up on the tree. When I turned the tree lights on, I saw an angel in the shape of an angel. And I thought, okay, that's just me seeing this. And then I left it on, and the neighbor went by. He called me. He said, where'd you get your angel? I said, so you saw it too? He said, yeah. So, I've had a lot of supernatural type things of that kind, which, if somebody wants to read it, they can read it in that book. Go on Amazon.com and find it. But other than that, that's pretty powerful when you start dealing with a lot of spiritual type situations too.
Absolutely, Patsy. And how has this changed your perspective in life after you've had encounters with the Sasquatch, the supernatural and aliens? Like, how do you feel about life in general?
Well, I know that we all will have to face a spiritual redemption time that we need to before we leave this earth, and we need to know which direction our destination is headed in, so we can be at peace. And sometimes we are looking for that. We can't find the peace that we need in all this. And so we have to ask God to direct us and to show us, give us the spirit of discernment and affirmations and confirmations on things as we see it. And, that's helped me to believe and to know that it's not just a hoax, some people don't believe it until they see it or experience it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it takes. And what would you say for people that do call on God and the Holy Spirit and affirmations, and they pray a lot, but things just get worse? Do you have any advice for them?
Yes, I would say that we're not promised that every day is going to be glorious or full of sunshine without experiencing the downward hills and the temptations and the low valleys that we go through in life. Because we have to experience that to appreciate the good side when we come out of the valleys and head to the mountaintops, so to speak. So I think everybody has to have a chance of understanding, and the biggest thing is forgiveness and redemption, and understanding that the only way we can find that is going through our Savior Jesus Christ. He's the one and only to find that. And if they don't know that, we have to encourage them to go on faith. Faith is believing even though you don't see it sometimes, and the same thing with the Sasquatch. Even though you don't believe it until you see it yourself. You want visual, contacts. Like Jesus put his hand out and he said, do you see the scars in my hand? We want to feel it. Doubting Thomas, we want to see it and feel it, to believe it sometimes. And we have to go on faith and trust that it's there, even though we don't feel it in our heart. So we might go through the low moments and not believe that we're Christians, but we are, if we claim it and know that he's there all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to experience the bad to appreciate the good. And that's just how it is. A lot of people will have ups and downs, and some people will have extreme ups and downs. And unfortunately, there's a lot of downs, and they just got to keep pushing through it. And I do agree with you. Like, there's a lot of people that doubt that Sasquatch exists, and it's just something you have to see for yourself to really understand. But of course, there's a lot of open-minded people out there who believe, and they're open to this type of phenomenon. And I do believe that there's something big coming in the future, and these things are warning us of that event. And I think they have been since the time of the Native Americans, and more so now.
I agree with you 100%. I think you're right on target there. And we just have to uh, live each day as if it were our last and not be afraid of what is to come. But we need to prepare ourselves too spiritually and know that that our God is walking with us. And He's going to be there to protect us no matter where we go from this point on.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say for the people that say aliens and Sasquatch are demonic? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I'm sure that you know anybody can see I guess evil or may feel like something is evil or demonic because of it being different and or mean, so to speak. And I guess you know the human beings on earth are demonic and evil and mean too, just like they're good and bad. I think species it could be in each group. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a very good
yeah,
point, because there's demonic people out there, people who are possessed, and you can tell there's something
yes.
evil about them. And I agree that it could be the same with the Sasquatch. And I think demons, they can get into like animals, people, objects, things like that.
hmm and it depends on how they view it, and you know if they see it as, like I said, a part of God's creation in some way, and that it's here to help us, not to hurt us. There may be ones out there that may be hurtful too. It's like if you go to somebody's territory and destroy it, they may come trying to run you out with their rocks or stones or sticks or trees falling. You know what I mean? And so we have to kind of watch for that. Uh, in that sense, where we may label it as being evil or mean or aggressive, but like I said, it's you may find that in different walks of life with people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot to take in and to understand, but
Yeah,
I don't know if we're meant to understand. I mean, even God's right hand angel, his most beautiful angel, ended up being the most evil thing in the universe.
absolutely.
Mm.
Fallen angels, yes. So, um, so I hope I answered your question. I mean, to what
Yeah.
and it's all kind of mind-boggling, but we know though, if we know Jesus in our hearts, we know that He's going to be there to get us through the hard times that we go through, and He will be there to encourage us. He'll send people into our lives sometimes we don't even know that could come there to help us cross those hard times that we go through, and even the people when they are grieving for loss or whatever they're encountering, it helps to have someone there that's got encouragement that can pick them up and lift their spirits, to pray for them or read scripture or whatever's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. How long ago was the encounter at the garden? You were 10 years old or 8 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was about 8 or 9. Um, I remember I was in elementary school age, but I couldn't remember the exact, but I was big enough. I was helping in the garden and I was carrying tools and, that kind of thing. So I know that, and I sit there and analyze this situation as I was looking in that bush line to see, okay, I ruled out it wasn't a person. It wasn't a dog, something with 4 legs, because it had 2 legs and it was standing upright. And and I saw the fullness, and I didn't see a shoulder indentation that you would find on a human. So I wrote all that stuff out. It wasn't a hoax, and so. And I stayed out. I played out in the field all the time. And if something was going to bother me and hurt me, it would have already happened when I was there.
Yeah,
So
I would agree
that's why
with
I said
that.
I don't think that that the Bigfoots were there. They could have been children ones wanting to play and get to know us and study us or understand us too. And as the more I look at it, it's kind of odd. I remember another thing kind of interesting. Of course, this could be anything. We had some kittens that were born, and I remember we had a little playhouse that my father built for us, and we had a little area there, and we fixed it where the kittens could go in there and be comfortable. Something came in that, and they had a door and everything. Went in there, and all that was left of those little kittens were their paws. And that was kind of a strange phenomenal. I mean, anything, I guess, could have ate them, Could have, of course, I don't know. We didn't have much coyotes back then or talk about coyotes or whatever, So I don't know what that was, but that was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Just thought
absolutely. And you never had activity in North Carolina? Nothing ever happened over there?
Not except for the thing with the dog I was telling you about, the dog backing up on me, that, and then this instrument, it looked like a long shaft instrument that was, like was leaving my side or my left side, wherever it was. It was pulling out from me. I don't know what that was. It was kind of strange, but anyway, that's the only thing I had. At that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's a lot of Bigfoot reports in North Carolina, and it's just a hot area. But same with South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. But yeah,
right.
For some reason, North Carolina has a ton of reports.
Yeah, they have a museum up in Lillington, North Carolina, which is going towards Virginia. And I have gone to that Bigfoot museum. They've got a lot of, things there to look at and see. And they did have, they put a pin on a map of where they had seen or heard of one. And one was in Zebulon, which is not far from where I am at. And that was pretty interesting to see that. So I don't know whether they're trying to find me or not. But to make connection. But anyway, that's, I always like to read and hear stories, and I had saw your other story, which was on your Sasquatch Therapy show on YouTube. I saw the guy in South Carolina that was the Saluda River, and I thought, okay, well, somebody else is seeing some stuff, then I'll share my story with you.
Well, I'm glad you found that video, and I have a few podcasts from South Carolina, and it seems like more people are opening up about it. There's definitely a lot of activity out there because there's been sightings even recently reported on the BFRO. Apparently people are seeing them, and there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, Patsy, you did an excellent job. I appreciate you for reaching out to me and sharing these experiences openly on the channel. You did an excellent job. So, yeah, I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and hope this will be a good learning experience for those that are watching and listening in.
Yeah, I think so. And hopefully more people open up about their own personal Bigfoot encounters from South Carolina, North Carolina, or wherever it may be.
Absolutely.
All right.
Because we hear more of them, seems like from other places, like more west a lot of times. And so it's good to know that they have been kind of seen in other parts of the earth too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. All around the world. Okay. Patsy, I appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you encounter anything else in the future, definitely let me know. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Miguel.
All right. Thank you. And you have an excellent day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Patsy, thank you very much for reporting your encounter on Sasquatch Theory, and I'm sure that encounter with the juvenile at the garden certainly left an impact on your life, and it changed you forever. If you guys want to check out Patsy's book called Reporting Live from Heaven, you can check it out on Amazon, and I will leave a link down in the description below. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who have had a Bigfoot experience or possibly encountered them and saw them with the naked eye, but there's also a lot of people listening who have never seen one or experienced the activity, but they certainly believe that these things exist, and it is truly inspiring to see one of these things, and it's frightening at the same time because we don't know what these things are. But yeah, if people wonder what it's like to see a Bigfoot, I can't really describe that because it's just something that's so unusual and it's hard to categorize in your mind, and that's why we listen to these videos. Even people that have seen them, you just don't really know what they are. A lot of people speculate if they're alien, if they're just an unknown primate, some type of ancient relic hominid, but we know one thing: they are out there and more people are going to encounter them in the future, and I feel like it's biblical. I feel like these things are here for a purpose. What do you guys think the purpose is? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, don't be a sour Sally Sasquatch and leave a rude comment. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and leave your thoughts about Bigfoot. We're all here to help each other, not to discourage one another. But yeah, if you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share with me here on the channel, please contact me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. And I want to take a moment to thank everyone who watches these videos, who listen to the podcast. You guys are amazing. And until the next one, you guys be safe out in the forest.